Hey guys, welcome to the Project Esports podcast. I'm James Graham. We're short Andrew tonight, but we have filled his spot with a guest host, Will Campbell. He's the other gentleman you see if you're watching our feed, or you're going to be hearing him throughout the podcast. And he's the one that's not Andrew. And of course, I have Dylan with me as well.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect. Will, why don't you give us a bit of a background? I know they all know about myself and Dylan, but yeah,
For
man.
sure. So, kind of how I got the in here, I actually used to go to high school with Jamie. That's how we met. But kind of my background in competitive sports, I started out, playing, back when the first Xbox 360 came out. But when I really started playing competitively was in COD 4. That was the big game for me. I actually stopped after that. Still followed the Call of Duty franchise, but I actually worked for Game Battles. I was actually the assistant head admin for whatever the current Call of Duty title was. So basically, my job entailed basically just handling disputes, making sure that people are being playing the game right, not cheating, enforcing the rules, making sure that there's a platform and a place for people to play and compete, and have it be a fair game. I kind of took some time off after that, and then I returned back into playing competitive Call of Duty back when Remastered came out 2 years ago, and really picked it up and haven't stopped then. I played competitive Fortnite since that game's come out, and I've since made the switch over to Black Ops 4 since it's been released, and I gotta say I'm having a real good time, real fun time with that game. Yeah. So been on the playing side, the competitive playing side. If anyone remembers Helix Gaming from the COD 4 days, we were a pretty big team back in the day. We were known as the only competitive pro hardcore team, and that's why everyone hated us, because they never got to play us unless they play hardcore. But yeah, that was kind of my background. I helped develop that team, and then when that team kind of broke away, as people started to leave the team, that's when I made my transition over to the support side of the game.
The admin kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I got to say, that was a lot of fun too. That was a lot of fun. A lot of work. Not the greatest pay at the time. Obviously, esports wasn't what it is now back then. So that was ultimately why I stopped doing that. But it was a ton of fun, and I love trying to give back to the community as much as possible.
Yeah, it definitely is a different kind of I don't want to say rush, but it's a different. You feel accomplished in a different way when you do the admin shit. It feels really really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn to respect the game a lot more too.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, guys. First we'll kind of start off with the housekeeping, as Andrew likes to call it. As most know, we're now associated with the Game Haus. We have that lovely subscribe button, which is great. So if you want to hit us with that Twitch Prime, feel free. We do appreciate it. We love it. We'll be thanking everybody later in the podcast, because that's what we do. We're internally grateful. But as well, anybody who was who follow us on our social, we did have a giveaway going on for the last week. Yeah, we got some pretty good traction with that. A lot of people seemed interested. It's definitely something we're going to be doing in the future. It was it's fun. It's good to see all the interactions, and I'm genuinely interested to see like what what the winner takes, if they want, if they have a particular team and stuff like that. I'm always interested to find out like who's everybody's like favorite team and stuff like that, especially on the esports side of things. I like to know the background and stuff like that. But yeah, Dylan, if you can think of anything, man.
Are we announcing the winner? Did we get announced?
I think we're gonna do it later on the Twitter. I think that's what Andrew wanted to do.
All right, so tune into the Twitter to see who won.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, okay. So, okay, we're gonna do it live. Okay, perfect.
Okay, I have it up here if you want me to read it off.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
All right, so the winner of the giveaway is at Chogal. That's with a 0. So that's Eugene Cho. Congratulations, you won, boy.
Congrats, my dude.
Damn, I didn't win.
that would have looked so bad.
I was banking on that.
Oh my god. So yeah, man, congratulations. It's awesome. With that, now that we've got the housekeeping kind of done and out of the way, let's jump right into it. Dylan, I know this isn't a subject that you usually like to cover too much, mainly because I usually kind of talk a mile a minute, and then we just kind of go on from there. but Will, feel free to weigh in, my friend.
Okay.
So the Worlds for League of Legends is ongoing right now, and it has been an absolute mess. It's been an upset after upset after upset because now we're at the point where, and spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched yet or is watching VODs later on, there's no Korean teams left. All Korean teams are eliminated. There's only one Chinese team left, and there's 2 European and 1 North American. Cloud9 is the only North American team to actually make it into the semis, alongside G2 Esports and Fnatic. The one team out of China is Invictus Gaming. They beat the high favorites of KT Rolster. RNG got beat up by G2. Like, this Worlds is a mess right now. Like, nobody knows what the hell's going on. Nobody knows. Every caster, every esports personality is blown away. They don't know what to think. Because for the last, oh my god, since season 2, so the last 5 years, we've had nothing but Korean champions. Before that, it was Taiwan, and then for season 1, it was Europe. It was Fnatic. Way back in the day, before it was really this competitive. So, yeah, it's been a roller coaster. It's fun to watch. The unfortunate part is, for a lot of North American fans, is that it starts airing at 1 a.m. and then the second match is typically at 5 a.m. So it's been really difficult to get like the viewership, but of course Riot's been fairly good about it. They've been replaying it throughout the day and stuff like that, so you can always have a chance to catch up. The big thing is that everybody's taking away from this is that, it's that classic, the gap is closing. But like at this point, the gap's legitimately closed. Like, because we've since superseded the Koreans for once. It feels kind of nice. It feels nice to be able to watch that happen. But yeah, that's really the big rant about it. I don't want to get too into it because it's there's a tons of material, there's tons of source material on it. The VODs I highly recommend for anybody to watch. Every game I've watched so far has been incredibly entertaining. There hasn't been one game that I was like, oh, this is just like, painful to sit through. And I think it's just really the meta that's really taking place right now. It's a lot of skirmishes, a lot of team fighting. That seems to be the real big shtick of the game right now. So, and I think it's really benefited the Western play style. It's really great to see. Yeah, Dylan, Will, feel free to weigh in. I don't know how much.
I actually have a couple questions.
Yeah, hit
me.
I
think it's pretty interesting because that skill gap kind of has always been there, not just in League of Legends but for all games. I mean, just coming from a StarCraft background, that was like always the biggest meme, is that there was Koreans, and then if you weren't Korean, you were a foreigner, basically. Yeah. So what do you think is leading up to this? Skill gap getting closed and NA actually being to have a fighting chance?
I think one big factor is the generation of players being kind of cycled through. The old guard of the Korean rosters have basically slowly started like to die off almost, right? This is the first year we haven't even seen Faker at Worlds, right? So I think a lot of this new talent is trying to get used to being at the world stage. I mean, to a degree, because the old champions, Gen G, were there and they did get eliminated fairly early. But I think the inexperience is one thing, which is killing them. I think it's based on the new guard coming in doesn't know how to deal with the Western aggression. So I think that's been a factor in it as well. And then I think it's just the way the game is set up right now, that has kind of really benefited, again, the Western play style. It's this early game team fighting, like just being scrappy as hell. So I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway right now is those two factors: new rosters and the way the meta is set up. It really benefits the West.
Now, do you think this is going to keep going on? Like, do you think this is like if the gap is closed now, or do you think this is a one-off?
I think this is a one-off. I genuinely think this is a year that some of the newer teams needed a chance to get a crack at Worlds and see how it goes. I mean, KT Rolster did have, like, which is the first seed of Korea, has had people that have been to Worlds before, but as that roster, they haven't been together. Freak of Freaks, which is the second seed out of Korea, they hadn't been there at all except for one player. So they had like no idea what the pressures were like or anything like that. So I think that is also a pretty big deal as well. So I think once we see this switched up, it'll be a different story. Now China has no excuse. China has sent like 3 teams. They've all been to Worlds. They all know this. They all know the deal. but they just didn't want to. They just didn't want to show up. I guess it was real bizarre. Um, believe it or not, one of the players that came out of China. If you don't have anything to kind of build on that, Dylan, I can kind of move into our next little bit. RNG's marksman player Uzi is now sponsored by Nike, which is which is pretty big for any League of Legends.
Yeah.
He's the first one ever to get a Nike sponsorship. It's crazy. Do either of you guys think that this is going to be like a reoccurring trend? That this is just kind of like the start of like major sponsorships?
Definitely. Yeah, it kind of brings you back to when Nadeshot signed with Red Bull, and that was like the big thing, right? It was like no one had ever considered any pro gamer, an athlete or they didn't think it was a liable business, venture for any company. And when Red Bull signed Nadeshot, it was huge for them, right? So I think I'm actually surprised that with the growth, especially with big titles like Fortnite hopping into pop culture, I'm surprised that it hasn't actually, it's not happening more now. I think you're going to see it a lot over just with how big Twitch has become and how big these gaming titles are getting. I think you're going to see it happen, a lot over the next few years.
Yeah. Do we think this is going to be? Like, I'm curious to kind of get your guys' opinion on, like, do you think it's going to be, like, what major brands are going to sponsor these guys? Nike's like streetwear, athletic wear. Do we think it's going to be kind of limited to that and like, again, like Red Bull and stuff like that? Or do we think there's going to be, like offshoot things like car companies and stuff like that? As we've kind of seen with, like, China, like the Chinese domestic region is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz. So do we think with this that's going to be transitioned to the players, or do you think it's going to stay strictly clothing? What do you guys think?
I think that it'll depend on whoever the personality is, right? Like if the platform is there with Twitch, for the most part, and YouTube for people to show off who they really are, and I think brands are going to follow them depending on what kind of individual they present themselves as, right? So if you have, say, like a prime example would be if you had a big content creator that was always dressed up and really liked fashion and really liked to dress well, you might see clothing companies jump on, right, and try and get, you know what I mean? So it really depends, I think, on who the person is. I think the brands will be more reactive than proactive in trying to find people and who they give money to. Yeah.
Dylan, what do you think?
All right, so Dylan Beal, director of global esports for every esport. I have a plan, right?
Okay. All right, hit me.
You take a shoe company. Maybe not the coolest shoe company out there.
Skechers, then.
Skechers. Maybe some New Balances, Got to get that dad wear out there, right? Company like that. Sponsors like a Ninja, right? All the kids will be buying it. New Balances, Skechers, premium clothing then. They'll do what they did with, I think it was Champions, right? That clothing company, how they were just like random wear that like no one really wore, and then all of a sudden they just became super in fashion. It's gonna be like that.
So you think clothing companies are actually going to piggyback off the success of players, vice the other way around?
No, I think so. I think from like a not meme perspective, I think a lot of like companies like Mercedes-Benz and stuff like that falls in line with like deals like Coke and Visa. They're like overarching sponsorships. But I think we're gonna start seeing a lot of more personal brand sponsorships. So like how like Jordans are really big. Why not have one with Faker or something? Like something like that. I think maybe like street fashion or something will be super in trend with esports. Maybe overall, maybe I see that more of like teams themselves making these clothes. Kind of like what we were seeing out of, I think it was. What's the Overwatch team that's not Dallas Fuel that's in Texas?
Houston Outlaws?
Yeah, Houston Outlaws. Like how they had their kind of like sort of streetwear kind of stuff. We'll see that, I think, from more personal basis. But if you want to get like actual like single player kind of sponsorships, I think we'll see it from like Nike or something like that, or some like bigger fashion brand like that.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay. Well, a prime example you've seen. I don't know if you guys ever follow the channel, but Dr. Disrespect. He signed a deal with Gillette.
Yeah.
Whoever would have put that connection together, esports and Gillette, right? So there's a prime example. It's just because his amazing mustache.
Well, that's just it. It's exactly what Dylan said. It's it's a personal thing. The dude, the facial hair is a part of the image, right? So like Gillette's just like this makes total sense, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Gillette. I think Gillette is also associated with TSM as well. I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, they're in there. It's really weird to sit here and like reflect like which brands have actually made it in esports, and either the randomness, and then you're like why are they there, or the ones that like totally make sense. So yeah, no. It's going to be interesting to kind of watch and see like who's next, or like what brands next as well. Um, and I think, and yeah, somebody in the chat's also saying that like Boston Uprising is sponsored by Gillette as well. Like those
So
guys
they're
are
so they're just making moves in the whole.
pretty much.
Yeah. They see the potential. Yeah.
Oh, exactly right. So the next thing related to League, but also Will in your wheelhouse as well. As a lot of people know, Nate Shot started the brand 100 Thieves. He started I guess it's not even a brand; it's a company. The team itself had a very, very lackluster performance at Worlds. There were some very shady roster moves that really had no exposure. And since their elimination from Worlds, Nate Shot came out and explained, almost did like a public apology. Was like, listen, guys, his background is COD, as everybody knows, it's COD. And he's used to basically having these roster moves that don't get a lot of lightning exposure because that's the background he's known from. Like that's kind of the thing. And basically wanted to let everybody know that they'd be more open moving forward and stuff like that about how the roster setup is and everything like that. He seems like a pretty genuine dude. The guy seems like he puts on a good face. And he genuinely cares about his brand, about his team, about his players, everything like that. I just want to see if you guys think that this is like a genuine thing, or if he's just kind of covering his behind just to make sure to defend how poor of a performance they had. Is like I mean, Dylan, you've been around, but it sounds like as long as Will as far as esports. So I don't know how much you followed Nade Shot. But yeah, do you guys think this is legit, or do you think he's just trying to save his hide?
I think it was a good business decision on his end to post that video. I actually watched the video. I know exactly.
Oh, did you? Okay.
It's surprising. I know. Yeah, I think he ended up doing what he set out to do when making that video. But the only thing that kind of irked me a little bit was he said that, and that was his point, that in Call of Duty that roster moves were just kind of done and no one ever really made a big deal about it. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, I think every roster move on any pro team that has any kind of following at all has a big impact and almost requires an explanation, right? Coming from any competitive sports organization, just not even just esports. Anytime a big name player is moved, fans demand a reason for it. It's not that they need your approval. The fans aren't saying you need to have our approval to move somebody, but they want to know why.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that, and he's right in saying that when you have that disconnect between, if you want to call it management and the players, then people just they have no interest in following that organization at all, because they just know that they'll never really know what's going on. And that's what people want to do, is they want to feel connected to an organization. Right. So that was my thing. That bothered me a little bit, but overall, I liked the video. I liked where he's coming from with it.
Dylan, did you get a chance to watch it, or?
No, I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I mean, Will, you know your stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the big takeaway part of that video that I genuinely wanted some like input on, because I found he carried himself very well. He presented that whole situation very, very well. But that was the one thing to kind of credit. I mean, it seems like a minor thing from the video standpoint, but you got to think too. Like, he's blaming the entire reason he wasn't talking about his players being moved and released on his background, and if that background isn't true, that's kind of sketchy. That's why I'm not too sure if it's a genuine thing or not.
I think he would have been better off if he just had not said that. Like, he didn't have to give a reason. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The video wasn't an explanation. It was more of like an apology, and here's what we're going to do moving forward. I don't think he needed to give a reason, and he ended up using that one as his reason. I just don't think it was a good one.
Do you think that's going to be any lashback from the FBS community? Do you think they're going to look? I guess not, because I mean, it's two totally different genres, right? So
and I feel like, at least I mean, this is coming from me. I'm not trying to speak for the whole FPS community, but I feel like the better the relationship are between the two communities, the better off everyone is. And really and truly, I think Nadeshot is the only one that I really see trying to do that.
Hmm.
You know, there's not many people that are even reaching out to the other gaming communities. They're just focusing on their, you know,
Their
their
one thing.
genre, their one thing, right? But he's trying to kind of commingle everything together. And I mean, it could just be my ignorance, but I don't see many other people, even trying to do that.
I think I think the only other one that I've seen that's been successfully, and not even totally successfully because they had a lackluster season, was Optic, because Optic is, which I mean, but I mean it's Optic. Optic's been around for forever. They're
Right.
like they're one of the first brands ever. So I think, but again, you're right. I think Nadeshot is, I think, doing a lot better job publicly of is associating everything together. Where, yeah, exactly, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I want to kind of move over to back more further into the SBS and actually talking about Optic. So CS:GO, as we all know, is a worldwide phenomenon. It's great. It's everywhere, including India. I guess Optic has a branch of a CS:GO team in India specifically. Unfortunately for them, something we haven't seen in ages, because it's esports as a whole has developed so crazy. We actually saw our first. I think this is in the recent history that I've seen, somebody actually running hacks on at a LAN event. Forsaken, player for Optic Gaming, was running hacks, and like I saw the video, and it's so hard to watch because the guy is
hold him back.
yeah he tries basically the ref tries like go onto the computer, and he like tries to like shove him away and like try and basically like get him away from the computer. So like, what, like, I don't know, like, what do we think motivated this guy to do this? Like, why do you think that was why do you think he thought that was a good idea? Like, I mean, do we think this is just maybe like, do we think this is like because India is not like a developed esports region? Do we think this is why we saw this, and it's not like they haven't gone through the growing pains already, or what do you think?
I think it's a mixture of a couple different things. So one, I think it's just pressure. I mean, if you're Team Optic India, that's a lot of pressure on you because you have this big company that's going into a region that esports isn't super blowing up yet. We're just starting to see kind of the wheels turning over there, and really esports starting to take off. So I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on these players, and I'm sure that it is the Optic name behind them, but I don't know how much of the Optic infrastructure is there. I don't know if they have the top tier PR guys, if they have the top tier like analysts and coaches over there to kind of steer these guys in the right direction. So they might just be kind of a really good team kind of thrown together with some good money behind them, and so unfortunately this is something that if we brought up, I'm sure Will you would know for sure, like a couple years ago, like 10 years ago or something, if this happened at a tournament, they'd be like, oh, like, yeah, I mean, it happened, we caught him, no big deal, but like it wouldn't be surprising that this happened for sure. So I'm not super shocked at all, but I mean the video is really funny because like they do try to pull him away, and I saw some pictures. I think there was a Twitter thread about it, and there were some pictures in the thread of just like he was hiding just like the hacks, as it was just like named like word dot something dot like batch, or it was something ridiculous like that. And the reason why he pulled him away is because he was right about to delete it. And it's funny because he like literally like I think right click delete, and he was going for the recycle bin to try to clear it out. And
oh my god.
And so
they said he did delete it, so that might have been what happened. Maybe he did delete it and they were able to get it from the recycling bin in time.
Yep, they were able to get it, and between that and then the software that they're running to pick up that kind of stuff, they just they were like, oh no, it's just too many red flags pointing in this direction.
Yeah.
Well, clearly if he did it, he must have thought he could get away with it.
Well, it's
so I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Well, it's actually interesting because CS:GO has some actually really elaborate hacks into it, like super elaborate. That like you think someone going in with aimbot, it's like, oh, it's super obvious because like they're just like whipping around, going to heads and stuff. But it was a couple of years. No, maybe it wasn't a couple of years ago. Maybe it was one of the first a couple stories that we actually did here on Project Esports, because I remember talking about it with you guys. It was something like the hack is like every like fourth shot or something that you do will go to the head. So players who are really good, you're pointing up towards the head anyways. It's just that your spread on the fourth shot just like instantly goes to the head. So it's something that's like not super obvious, and you still have to be pretty good at the game to, you know, kind of pull that kind of stuff off. But obviously it gives you a huge leg up. So I don't know exactly what kind of hacks this guy was doing, but it could have been something along those lines of where, you know, it is a little bit hard to detect sometimes.
No doubt.
Yeah, because if it is set up in that manner, I mean, it's like, I mean, so like if it's something like that, like every fourth shot or something like that, that's believable for somebody to pick off somebody like on the fourth shot. You know what I mean? So trying to be able to discover that, it seems really, really ridiculous. I'm curious to kind of see what happens. One, to this guy's career. Two, to what happens to Optic India, to see how much this majorly implicates the brand. Like I don't know, or Optic in general. Like I don't know, like if they're gonna face lashback. And there are other regions like North America where they're so dominant, right? It's kind of interesting to see and this is like the nice, like I don't even want to say the nice part, because it's not the nice part. It's the unfortunate part about globalization with brands and stuff like that. What your team in across the sea does is going to screw you over where you're based out of. You know what I mean? And you need to kind of face that. And it just seems like such a like almost like a hassle to try and police these different brands, like these different these offshoots of your brand, right? To make sure you don't get stuff like this, right? Ugh.
It's a tough one. That's a tough call to make. I mean, back when I was playing competitively, I mean, none of my events I did were LAN events, but there was a zero tolerance, rule, and everyone knew it, that there was a zero tolerance rule in effect for cheating. And if you were caught cheating, you and your team gone.
Yeah, so it wasn't even just it wasn't the player specifically, it was everybody, right?
Everybody, yeah. Now I can't see them breaching out to the whole Optic organization, obviously, but I think that Optic would almost have to be forced to cut ties with. There's 5 of them on that team.
For CS:GO, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that they would cut ties with all 5 of them, but I don't know. They might be able to just put it off as it was, they didn't know, and it was this one guy who did this on his own. I don't know how they'll be able to spin it, but.
I think this is what's going to happen, just because it's a modern esports organization. We're going to see press release saying that they don't tolerate this kind of behavior on any of their teams, on any of their platforms. They're going to instantly drop him, obviously DQ'd from the entire tournament. But besides that, I think that's all that's going to happen. I mean, I
think that's the right move too. I think if that's what ends up happening, I think that's the right action to take for sure.
Do you think there's going to be any?
Just hope it never happens again.
Well, exactly, right. Do you think there's going to be any implications towards the coaching staff, or do you think that because he acted on his own and stuff like that, that nobody else is going to be really guilty or associated with him? Do you think there's going to be any of that stemming out and it being other people's fault because they were either aware of it, guilty by association sort of thing? Do we think it's going to be any
I think they'll do a very, very thin and just borderline investigation to see if they know if anyone else was aware of it. And probably won't turn up anything, and then they'll just say, yeah, and if this happens again, it's on all of you or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mostly internal. They're just going to do kind of like an internal audit, see what's going on, but externally we probably won't hear any of that stuff unless they discover it's a whole big cheating ring.
Yeah, it's the whole team's in on it and stuff like that, right? All right. With that being said, then let's go over to the reason why we do have Will on the podcast tonight. The big, we've talked about it in the last couple weeks, especially when it was on the up and up. Call of Duty has been absolutely annihilating numbers on Twitch. They've been it's been their show. We talked about this briefly a little bit in the pre-show in so much in the pre-show, but just before we went live, basically about Call of Duty, what it has to offer, what is new with this iteration, and why it's becoming so popular. Will, you had a couple really good points on on the speed, on basically what every player was kind of after. Do you want to kind of get back into that and reiterate that?
Yeah, sure. My big thing with Call of Duty has always been a very competitive game, right? It's not one of those games you go on and you just kind of float around a little bit. Like you're there and you're there trying to win the game, right? It's just the way the game's designed. And I find for a competitive game like that, the least amount of restrictions the game can put on you and your ability to play, the better off you are. And this is the first time that I've played a Call of Duty pretty much, I'd say, since COD 4, or maybe MW2, that I felt like I was fully in control of my character and my shot, which makes it amazing. What it does do though too, which is you can kind of trade it off as a bad thing, but I think it's a great thing in the competitive scene, is the skill gap's massive. Right?
Okay.
If I'm in complete control, that means I can do stuff. I'm not hindered by the game at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go on and start playing public matches, the gap in skill is so big that it almost makes it not fun. And that's why the competitive side of it kind of takes over, where you're just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to go now and I'm just going to go play with guys that are at my level.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's kind of the big thing that I noticed. It's an extremely athletic game. Like you can move in that game like at will, and it's fast paced. You got to be able to think fast. Referring kind of specifically to Blackout, the battle royale game, it's more I find it simpler than the other battle royale games, where it's really just positioning and shot. If you're smart enough, you can get in the better position than the guy you're going at, and you have a better shot, you'll win that battle 10 times out of 10, literally. So it's a game that you're going to see a lot of these top players, a lot of these pro players just absolutely dominate. Like they're going to be doing some ridiculous stuff. The content that's going to come out as a result of it, the 360, quick scopes and all that stuff, it's going to be insane. And then you just add in the fact that they really just kind of optimize the multiplayer, the old traditional Call of Duty game style. And although it can still be frustrating at times when you get spawn trapped or you're, you know what I mean, getting shot in the back every 3 seconds, there's still those frustrations, but it's a lot better than what it has been previous years. And I think the fact that it's coming off of, I think WW2, the title just before it, was like almost a complete bust. Like the launch was terrible. They didn't really do anything to the game. There in terms of a competitive standpoint, there was only 3 maps.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Anytime you're a competitive player that doesn't like to do one and dones, you like to play a series. If you're playing the same 3 map cycle, 25 times a night, it wears down on you, right? So I think that was an absolute bust. And then I was kind of, I fell in love with Fortnite over the summer, and I was even getting to the point where I was like, I'm not even going to get Black Ops 4.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even going to buy it. Like I've dedicated so much time to the Call of Duty franchise, and I just don't think that they can deliver it anymore. And then even when they announced that they were doing a battle royale, I was like, they're going to screw this up. Like they're going to, they're going to find a way to screw this up. And it's what everyone wanted. Like when PUBG came out and everyone was like, I want this game. I want to play PUBG, but I just want it to be a little bit faster and a little bit smoother, right? Basically what I want is I want PUBG with Call of Duty gun mechanics. And I feel like they did it. They did it this year. So I'm excited. I think the competitive BR is going to take off. Maybe not quite to the level that Fortnite did, but I think it will be there. So I think you're going to see a huge competitive scene for both Blackout, and you'll see the traditional competitive scene in Black Ops 4, and the same kind of thing when you see guys like Karma and those guys and Scump playing Call of Duty multiplayer, and the stuff that they're doing is just insane. And it's going to make for some fun events for sure.
I kind of wanted to kind of build on a point you kind of said earlier, that basically the skill gap is so noticeable in the multiplayer that the skilled players really like basically go in and pub stomp more or less, right? So do you think this is going to be? Do you think that's going to be ultimately part of the game's downfall, or do you think that pre-established skill gap is going to make it so that the good players are only playing with the good players and the bad players are playing with the bad players? Or do you think this is going to, you think there's going to be a lot of crossover? Or because it's gotten so popular, because of the BR, that the actual multiplayer itself, now when I say multiplayer, I mean like the straight up 5v5s and stuff like that, or 4, yeah. Do you think the two are going to cross over? Do you think this is going to be an issue, or like...
See, and this is why I don't think that this Call of Duty title will ever be as big as Fortnite or League of Legends or CS:GO or any of those huge titles. And the only reason I think that is because I think it's only really going to take off from a competitive standpoint. I don't really think the game has a huge multiplayer, friendly vibe to it, which
Mhm.
Fortnite had for sure. That was one of the reasons that they absolutely killed it, because you could be a complete noob, hop into a Fortnite, drop out of that battle bus, man, and you're having a fun time, right? Where Call of Duty, and it might just be me, like maybe just because I'm such a competitive person, but like you can only take so much of that. You can only take so much of getting your ass beat in Call of Duty before you're ready to throw the controller out the window. Like honestly, it's a frustrating game when things aren't going well. And I think with that skill gap, most of these guys that are just hopping on their 60-inch TV with their Dolby Digital surround sound, just playing a pub with sitting on their couch with their buddy behind them, eating pizza. I don't think they're gonna have fun playing the game. I really don't. I think they're gonna play one game and hop off. You know what I
So
mean?
you, so you think because I mean, like right now, the writing's kind of on the wall as far as like numbers and stuff like that. But do you think
Yeah.
there's going to be a significant drop off? Like basically, people getting like, okay, this is this is the hot new thing, but screw this after a while, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's I mean, don't get me wrong. The launch was an extreme success. Like it took over Twitch, which I don't think anyone really expected.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge success. But I definitely think you're going to see a drop off. I think it's going to be a much better title and have a much bigger following and community than the previous COD titles have
Right.
over, say, the last 6 titles or so. But I don't think it's going to get. I don't think it's going to get that big internationally. I don't really think it's going to get that big in terms of a non-competitive scene. You're not going
Okay.
to see it in pop culture like you did with Fortnite. Like
Okay.
Drake's not going to be on playing Black Ops. I don't think. Yeah.
So
That might just be my take on it. I don't know. I could be totally wrong.
yeah. So I actually want to pick your brain a little bit about this.
Sure.
So obviously, Call of Duty has its peaks in terms of multiplayer. Like some games definitely peak more than others. Like you were saying before, WW2, more or less flopped. So just looking at this game from a competitive aspect, I know you said Blackout's probably going to have some competitiveness around it, and we're going to see some good competition around it. But what do you think the regular multiplayer for this is going to do for the Call of Duty scene? Do you think, obviously, I would assume from where it was, it's going to go up a little bit, but do you think we're going to see kind of a big resurgence in competitiveness for Call of Duty, or what do you think?
I think so. I think it's going to get back. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to. I mean, the actual esports whole community is bigger now, so there will be more people playing it. But I definitely think it's going to do better than the previous COD titles, maybe with the exception of Black Ops 2. I think Black Ops 2, for a competitive gaming scene, they hit the nail on the head with that one, and people were just killing it. I personally never played it competitively, just because I was kind of outside of the video game world at that point. But I don't think it'll get to that level again, though. You might. It really depends, honestly. The size of the events and the size of the prize pool is really what draws the big attention and the big numbers. But obviously, there needs to be a huge following in order for prize pools to increase, right? So honestly, I really don't know at this point. What it is. All I can say is that I haven't been excited for a Call of Duty title in probably 6 years. And
That's heartbreaking.
I know, man, and I like COD's in me, COD's in my heart. Like I spent a lot of time on that game, and I will say though, this is coming from me having played it now. Like I'm not just saying this in terms of an initial opinion before its release. I'm excited. I'm excited to play Blackout a lot, and I'm excited to really get into competitive gaming again with the Black Ops 4.
So
I think it's a level playing field in which you'll see teams, really good teams, be able to really go at it.
yeah, so kind of a fault for that. A lot of esports out there, League of Legends, PC only. Overwatch might as well be PC only. Don't even talk about console for that game. But a lot of these super popular esports we've seen mainly one console only. Even like fighting games, they're primarily on one console, but like having a fight stick kind of unites them, even cross-platform. So for Call of Duty coming out on basically every major console and PC, and probably this one being the biggest PC launch just because it's on the BNet client, do you think that has anything to do with the competitiveness? Do you think, say if it was only on one console, it would be a little bit bigger? Maybe if it was only on PC, it'd be a little bit bigger? Or do you think, having all of them on everything kind of works against it?
I don't think it'll have much impact on on the compet. So here's my thing. So if you look at just the multiplayer aspect of the game, the traditional COD play, I think it's always been my impression that it's a game better suited for console, right? Put everyone on the same machine, playing under the same conditions, and let's see who the best player is. I think with Blackout, and again how athletic the game is and how much you can move around, and I think that ultimately, in order to play to the absolute top of your potential, I think you need to be on a PC. That's just my take on it. And that's coming from a console gamer, someone who's played console their whole life. I only ever PC game for probably 2 years of my life. I think that in terms of a battle royale, the big map with crowded with people, and you got to really use your head to get around. I think that PC is the way to play, and I don't think that the game would have been a success if they weren't able to get Blackout to run on PC, which I think was probably a big challenge for them. And that's why I kind of didn't have, I wasn't optimistic that they'd be able to do it and do it well, but I think they did a great job so far. And I haven't got much feedback from COD PC players. Obviously, most of the people in my community are more so console gamers, but from what I see in terms of content on YouTube and watching people's streams, it looks like it runs extremely smooth on PC. So I'm excited to see. That's where you're going to see the big Blackout players playing the game, I would say. And I think that the multiplayer will stick mainly to the console.
Okay. That's an interesting dynamic. That's an interesting takeaway that I kind of wasn't expecting, because you think, well, it typically it's basically, I don't want to say it's almost proven, but I mean it's a pretty widely known thing that 9 times out of 10 a shooter on PC kind of beats out a shooter on console, like that, as far as a mouse and keyboard kind of surpasses a controller, right? So for you to kind of put that divide and being like, okay, well, the BR is going to stay to PC, and the traditional multiplayer is going to stick to console. That's kind of interesting, because it's not something I kind of expected out of this title, or I guess out of the scene itself. Yeah, no, I'm gonna kind of pay close attention to kind of see how that develops.
I think it also has to do with have you guys ever watched tournament gameplay for BR? In which basically they're not playing against each other all the time. A lot of times it's a kill count type game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I think the fact that, if you have PC players, right, if you're playing 100 frames per second and then someone else playing 20, you have such a competitive edge on them, right? Whereas if you're going head to head, that competitive edge comes more into play. But if you're just going out playing against randoms in a pub match, it doesn't really affect the gameplay that much.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? When you're not playing directly against another person, and the multiplayer for COD is more of a direct, 1v1 kind of in your face battle, and that's when I think you need to level the playing field and make it as even as possible for everyone to really find out who the best gamer is.
Right. And you think that's going to basically stabilize over console vice PC?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. No, it's interesting. Yeah, because I again, like I said, that's not a dynamic I considered. That's not something I thought would be be considered by not only by anybody who's kind of an onlooker, but also the community itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think it's by design. You know what I mean? It's not by design. It's basically I just feel like that's where it's going to go from a competitive standpoint. I think that PC players are gonna really stay focused on the BR. And then I think that the actual multiplayer, MLG LAN events and things like that are going to be
strictly console.
Strictly console, yeah. And it'll be PlayStation, obviously, just because of their partnership. But
oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, kind of switch gears and kind of tone it down a little bit. We're gonna go into something that wasn't that. I mean, it's kind of like a timeless classic. It's been around for since the beginning of video games, more or less. But Dylan actually shared this for us and had a chance to check out the video. The Tetris Classic World Championship was on, and this is not classic games is usually something we don't cover. It's because it's such a niche market. But this was crazy to watch. This was insane. Basically, for anybody who hasn't watched it, there was a new world champion crowned. And the head-to-head between these two was absolutely ridiculous. It was insane. Dylan, I know this is your thing, so I kind of want to let you have this, man.
Yeah. So, classic Tetris is basically what it is. It's one of the most classic versions of Tetris out there. It's a head-to-head kind of mode, and the way it kind of works is that everyone has the same blocks. So, throughout the course, you will get the same things that your opponent's getting. And the way you go against them is that you go for score. And the way that you score highly in Tetris is you just get a Tetris in the game, which I think it's 5 blocks or more height. So if there's 5 blocks or more height and you clear the field, that's a Tetris. So basically the big points are the Tetris, so you want to get as many Tetrises as you can. And what's interesting about this is that as it goes on, it gets faster and faster and faster. So around, I think it's 26 or so, level 20, 26 or so, around there it starts getting really hard, where like these top tier players like will lose. They'll just lose the game. And so what was really interesting about this matchup, it was Joseph versus Jonas. And I believe Jonas was the one. He's an older dude. He's been the reigning champ for like 7 years in a row for Classic Tetris. Really big deal. And this young kid, Joseph, he's really, really good. And he kind of came up and it was a huge upset. And the way the finals kind of play out, I would definitely recommend anyone go out and watch the VOD. It's a really hype VOD. And actually, James Chen is casting it, and he's a Street Fighter caster.
I knew I recognized his voice. Yeah.
And so he was casting it, and I love his casting. He's really, really good at it. But so it was going on, and they get around to the upper 20s, and Jonas is ahead in points, but he loses. I think he made one misplay, and then it just stacked up, and he lost. And Joseph, what his main thing is that, I forget the exact word they use, but he specializes when it gets really fast, and he's able to drop the bricks really fast and kind of do a lot of really fast placements. He's really, really good at that, and that's where he excels. And of course, because they started getting to that level, he was able to just knock out a bunch of Tetrises and get to like level 30 or so, which is absolutely insane. So the older dude was ahead, and he lost his, and so his score was just basically frozen. And so this young kid was like, all right, well, I have to come back from here. And then he just goes into like hyper mode, just starts like dropping bricks left and right, and then it's like boom Tetris, boom Tetris, boom Tetris. He gets it, and then like of course he doesn't play it out, but like once he hits the score, he just like drops his controller and he starts popping off. It's really hype. And what's crazy, if you go, hey, like, check out this esport, it's like the oldest version of Tetris. I promise it's hype. Normally you wouldn't even think of that, but it actually gets really crazy once everything's going really, really fast. And especially since it's like head to head in that kind of mode, I think it's super awesome. And I think the reason why we're seeing this is because there's a new Tetris game coming out. I think it's called Tetris Effect.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really hype. I really like it. I started getting into Tetris when Puyo Puyo Cross Tetris came out. It came out for the Wii maybe like 2 years ago or so. But that had a really, really cool Tetris mode to it, and I really liked it. So I like to see when weird classic games kind of break into like our sphere of esports. I know, James, me and you had that long talk about, I think it was chess a couple months ago.
Yeah, it was.
When that was blowing up. So I like when alt esports comes around, and a lot of times they're hype.
I mean, like, yeah, it's almost like the hipster esport, right? Like, I mean, like, that's kind of what we're seeing.
I spend a lot of time playing Tetris on my BlackBerry. That game's addictive for sure, and it's hard. It's hard for sure. I gotta watch that video.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and the nice part is too is the camaraderie about like how the two interact like after it is like there's no malice. Like they're both like super hyped for each other, right? So
yeah.
No, it's awesome, and like I think because the esports scope is getting so big, you're gonna start seeing like again these alt esports kind of making a resurgence. These games that have been around for ages, kind of coming back into the limelight because everybody's just hungry for more. Everybody wants more content to kind of digest, just like us, right? Like I mean. Half the reason our show works is because people want more stuff to find, so we find stuff like this, right? So, I think this is just kind of like the beginning of seeing like this other stuff coming back up, and especially because Buddy from Street Fighter was the one commentating it. You're seeing like personalities like him getting involved in this other stuff and almost like resurrecting it, right? So, I think if we continue to see that, it was the same thing we're seeing like in more and more crossover as well. Bruce Buffer, the announcer for UFC, recently did a trailer for Dota. Like that's what we're starting. I'll put that link up on our Twitter in a little bit because yeah, it was ridiculous, and you're starting to see that, right? So it's this constant crossover of mainstream sports going into esports going into alt esports, and then basically everybody's encompassed, which is sick. It's awesome. Like that's what you want, right? And finally to round off our night, this happened a little while ago. For a lot of people involved in the esports community, a very controversial but a very, very popular person was Total Biscuit. He of course had this crazy long battle with cancer. He beat it, came back, sort of thing. He is now the first person who's not a pro player to be inducted into the Esports Hall of Fame. This was announced, I think, last week, or just within this last week. Yeah, basically being inducted. Unfortunately, I'm going to see I can imagine seeing some lashback about that. But I think overall, for what he's done for esports as a whole, this is totally justified. Will, I'm not too sure your familiarity with Total Biscuit, if you're familiar with the...
Not, unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough. But Dylan, do you feel like this is totally understandable? Like,
yeah, 110%. Total Biscuit's someone who came out on YouTube, made a lot of YouTube videos, and he's very, very successful. And he didn't have to get involved with esports, but he did. It wasn't advantageous for him financially to do this kind of stuff, but he really believed in it, and especially like StarCraft, of where he really threw a lot of weight behind StarCraft. He threw a lot of weight behind League of Legends. I mean, he had an item named after him because of the Total Biscuit.
Total Biscuit of Rejuvenation.
Yeah, because I think
like it was actually in the game.
Yeah, they ran a promotion a long time ago with League of Legends that if you got like something crazy like more than 1,000 or 10,000 referrals or something like that, they were like, oh, well, name an item in the game after you. And I think it was him and maybe one other person.
Athene was the other one.
Yeah, Athene's Holy Grail, right?
Yeah. Unholy Grail.
Unholy
which
Grail.
Is suiting.
Yeah. But yeah, so he was someone who actually like really pushed people into League of Legends through his videos and pushed StarCraft really, really hard. And he even had a team, Axiom, who always ran at a loss because he just really wanted to support the scene and support a lot of these really good players that, he wasn't making money, but he had enough of a profit to kind of say, you know what, I don't need all this just money going to me. I'm going to throw some into my team so I can support these players and support the scene. So I am very happy to see this. I really wish, a lot of this stuff would have happened a little bit earlier on. And, hopefully a lot of people did reach out to him, when he was still around and let him know how much of an impact he actually had on the esports scene, because he really did. But I'm glad to see this. I think the first person who's not a player definitely, I think it should be him for sure.
Yeah. It's basically suiting that this is the first guy to kind of break that barrier of being personalities and supporters, I guess, of being inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is great. Like, I mean, the guy deserves, in my opinion as well, the guy deserves it 100%. He's done so much for esports as a whole. Like, I mean, we wouldn't be doing the show, like my involvement in league and shit like that. Like, it wouldn't be happening because of like dudes like this, right? So no, I think it's totally justified as well. I am more than comfortable going on the record of saying that, despite the guy's controversy, because it's a sin. Like I wish there wasn't that air around him, but no, it's good. It's great. I actually want to go and look at the Hall of Fame and see who else is in there, because I'm not super familiar with like the rest of the names or anything like that. I'm sure there's gonna be ones you recognize, but kind of want to go through it.
Yeah,
but,
actually, before we wrap this up, I definitely want to just share one of my favorite Total Biscuit quotes of all time. Mm-hmm. Total Biscuit once said that I will support this scene on my wrecked dick if I have to.
I like it. It's just, the guy was ridiculous. The guy was like absolutely insane, and that was just it. He was gonna support it, like literally with his dying breath, man. Like even when he was like on his way out, he was still making content and stuff like that. That was the crazy part, right? Mm-hmm. He never stopped. So, but with that, Will, unless you have anything else, my friend, to kind of add in to anything.
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun, and I'm glad I could contribute more than I had thought I would. But I appreciate it. A lot of fun, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Hell yeah, man! Absolutely. Dylan, what about you, buddy?
No, just thanks, Will, for coming by. Definitely really good to hear about Call of Duty and just first-person shooters in depth a little bit more for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's definitely not mine, Dylan, or Andrew's wheelhouse. Like, I mean,
Right.
that's not our scene. So yeah, to kind of have you kind of come on as our
Absolutely.
a resident expert, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, with that, guys, that kind of wraps us up for the Project Esports podcast. I hope I didn't do too bad of a job hosting in Andrew's place. I'm trying to think of like how we do our usual closing because I never have to worry about it. Dylan, do you want to do your part there, my friend?
Yeah, so obviously we go live every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over here at the Game House's Twitch channel. You can also find us the following day every Tuesday morning on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, every single podcast platform out there. We always have the VODs up as well as the Game House's YouTube channel. But just go out and just search Project Esports Podcast on any podcast platform and we'll be there for your listening.
Yeah, and every like, subscribe, anything you guys chuck us means the world to us. Especially like any social, any even on here, even just weighing in the chat. I've seen good old Coach Bill here was getting a fair bit of flack from his getting a fair bit of flack from his supporters.
I didn't choose that one.
But yeah, no, man, it all means a lot. We all appreciate it here. So yeah, and again, thank you, Will, for coming on, man, being our resident expert. Yeah, no, guys. With that, I'm James.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Will.
Perfect. Thanks for watching the Project Esports podcast.
Thanks, guys.